Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. Alberta MP Leon Benoit grew up one of 17 kids in a farming family in eastern Alberta. All he ever wanted to do was to farm, but when politics came calling in the form of the Reform Party, he joined the party, he became their candidate in his riding, and he won. Leon Benoit has been a member of Parliament now for 20 years, and he joins me to talk about life beyond politics. Leon Benoit, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's great to have you here.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here.
You are an Albertan. You were born in Saskatchewan. Is that right?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, we lived on a farm 2 miles from the border.
Okay.
And in Lloydminster is Canada's only border city, and the hospital's on the Saskatchewan side. So for those times when my mom made it to the hospital, we have Saskatchewan birth certificates. The times she didn't, they have Alberta birth certificates. So I have a Saskatchewan birth certificate.
Did it complicate things as a kid, or did it not really matter?
Not at all.
You're still guaranteed your health care coverage and all that?
Oh, yeah, no problem. It's always a bit of an issue. You have to work in 2 provinces, but the city does great. Yeah. I still represent the Alberta side of Lloydminster,
right,
not the Saskatchewan side, but they work very well together.
Okay, you said when your mom made it to the hospital, and then there were times that she didn't. That's because your mom, you have 17. There's 17 of you in your family.
Yeah, that's right. I have 16 brothers and sisters, 8 brothers, 8 sisters.
Wow, that's just amazing. What was it like growing up in your household?
It was fun. It was great. I mean, we worked hard, and 6 days a week in the summer we were out in the fields working. Yeah. The boys and the girls were doing things around the yard and the house, but we always got along well. We still get along well.
Yes.
And we have family reunions that are mandatory every 5 years. And,
mandatory?
We call them mandatory.
Okay.
I mean, you can't really force someone to come if they don't want, but they do. And they're really great reunions, and to us, family is really important.
What were your mom and dad like? They must have been pretty courageous to parent 17 kids on a farm.
Yes, very much so. And a farm, there's no shortage of work to be done on a farm. And Dad just kind of, every summer, we would clear the trees and break 50 or 60 acres of land. So the boys were kept out of trouble in that way. But I mean, Mom, amazing. I remember her literally making 16 or 18 loaves of bread one day, and then half a dozen or a dozen the next day. So baking bread every day. We always had fresh bread, and she was foolish enough to have it hot out of the oven when we got home from school.
Oh my goodness.
At about 5:30.
So it would be gone.
Quite a bit would disappear right there. Yeah, because then you go out and do chores for 3 hours.
Did you really?
Yeah.
And then what time would you have dinner?
It really varied, usually around dark.
Okay.
So in the summer it could be 10 o'clock.
Wow.
In the winter, it's kind of whenever it worked out.
Okay. And she cooked for everyone, or did your sisters also get?
The sisters very much. Yeah. It was a female effort.
Okay.
Back then.
And do you ever remember thinking, I hate this, I don't ever want to do this when I get older?
No.
You loved it?
Not at all. Yes.
Yeah.
Very fond memories of growing up, and my wife and I have 5 children, including 2 sets of twins, and to us, family is so important.
Sure. What were some of the chores that you had as a kid on the farm?
Well, we had all kinds of animals, so feeding the cattle and bedding the cattle and taking care of new calves when they were born was a big part of my chores in the evening. We also had hogs. I seemed to end up being assigned the hogs all too often. I was never that fond of hogs.
Okay.
But we had sheep.
Was hogs the low end of the stick on the farm?
For me it was. Yeah, it's probably a great cash provider. And on a farm back then, getting cash when you needed it was a big deal.
Right.
So all kinds of animals. And then, of course, in the spring you'd seed a crop in the fall harvest, and it was always a family effort.
Yeah, a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah. You talked about getting cash on the farm and how that was important. How did your parents cope trying to raise 17 children? How did they bring in enough money to make sure that there was food on the table? And I mean, you're on a farm, so that would have helped on that front, but you have to still put everyone in clothes. And
we didn't know that we were poor. You know, we just didn't know. I never found out till I was really away from home that, you know, we were really poor, because all our neighbors were poor too when it came to money.
Right.
There just wasn't money around, and
right.
you really did. You were trying to take care of food wasn't an issue. We raised most of our own food, but clothing was always an issue, and I never really found this out till later. Mom and Dad just didn't make it our problem, and so they dealt with it, and it was very, very difficult. It wasn't an easy job for them to come up with the cash needed to get the things you need just for everyday life.
Did they talk about that to you ever? Did you have conversations
Later
with them
they did a little bit, but they never complained about it. And Mom just passed away 3 years ago. She's 88 years old, and she'd had a great life. In her, you know, once they retired into town, and she always had someone around. She was never lonely, as so many older people are.
Yeah. Did she do the sewing as well to make the clothes, fix the clothes?
She'd both, but yeah, usually you'd buy them, and she'd repair, and for work clothes it'd be patch on patch, literally, you know, before you got rid of them. That's the way it was back then.
Yeah.
But in the end, Mom and Dad actually retired very comfortably, because farmland has value, and they sold it to my oldest brother. And yeah, so they did well, and they had no regrets.
Where did you fit in the family lineup?
Just one older than the middle of the family, so I was the eighth.
Okay.
I'm the eighth.
Okay. I have trouble remembering my own kids' names. Some nights I mix them up. I call them the dog's name. What was it like in your household? Did you have?
No, it's never an issue when you grow up with them. It's never an issue. No. I still can name them, and you know, and we visit back and forth a lot. And
is everyone nearby still? Like, you're still very much.
We have. Right now, we've had people out of country for sustained periods of time, you know, from time to time, but right now we are all in Canada, and really the farthest from Alberta is one of my younger sisters lives in Quebec, near Durham City.
What were you like as a kid?
I was so shy that it was painful.
No kidding.
Extremely shy.
Why do you think?
I don't know, because it wasn't the case with all my brothers and sisters, certainly. But I was just really shy until, you know, I think probably about grade 8 that I just became a lot more outgoing, and teachers probably wished I hadn't.
Was it that dramatic a change?
It was, yeah.
Do you remember it feeling awful for you to have to go into social situations during that period when you were shy?
No.
You were just quiet?
Yeah, it was never an issue. It just kind of the way it was. We didn't get off, really, other than school, didn't get off the farm very much.
Right.
We had 3 holidays in the summer that were really important. One was the Lloydminster exhibition, a 3-day affair. We showed horses. We had registered Palomino horses. That's how the kids kind of made their money, and
you had Palominos?
And then we had a church picnic and a family picnic, which was a mom's side of the family, kind of extended family, and that was it. Other than that, you worked 6 days a week, and on Sunday you went to church, and then the rest of the day you had to play, and we always cherished that.
You must have cherished that, because if you had 1 day a week, you think of families now who don't live on a farm. Kids come home from school, they play, and then they eat dinner, and then they may play again, and then they go to bed. But you would have had a very different experience. It was a lot of work when you were a kid.
Yeah, and it was rewarding because you'd get something done. You know, like at the start of a summer, you'd have these trees. We had a little Caterpillar tractor, so one of us would go and push them down first and then pile them. Then, all the roots to pick, rocks, hard work to get it into production. And by next spring, you had that 50 or 60 acres into production, so you'd seed it to a crop.
Sure.
And so it was rewarding with the animals, it was always rewarding, ups and downs. Probably a lot tougher for the girls in the family.
Why?
Well, just, household chores, it's over and over and over, and
yes, that's
it's not very rewarding. Our sons have a different approach to it, and I just don't know. I'm joking. No, they cook, they do all the household chores. It's progress, for sure, it is.
Good to hear you say it.
Yeah, it is. I was just joking,
What about your own career aspirations as a kid? Most kids have an idea of what they want to be. Did you
I always knew what I wanted to do.
What was that?
I wanted to be a farmer. and that's what I did. I took agriculture in university.
Yeah.
Actually bought a farm on my own, about an hour from the home.
Yes.
Farm in my last year of university. It was 100% financed back then, you know. So that's what I did, and then I worked winters as a farm economist for a lot of years for Alberta Agriculture, and did financial management consulting for farmers and other things like that. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed that. I never got into politics because I wasn't happy with what I was doing.
What about your other siblings? Did any of them go into farming too, or did some of them get as far away as they could? What was the reaction? What was the split?
Yeah, my mom called farming a disease. Oh, wow. And because you know, once you've done it, it's hard to get rid of it, kind of. And at one time, there were, out of the 9 boys, 8 who had land, and sometimes rented it out, but were involved in farming in some way. There's really only 2 of us that have carried it on continually. Mm-hmm. And I, of course, not actively, but I have farmland. I rent it out to different people, and some I get custom done. But you know, being a member of Parliament, you have no time to really be actively doing any of the farming.
But you were farming up until you ran, is that right?
Yes, and I still am. I mean, I still have to file the forms for. As a farmer for when it comes tax time.
Yeah. What did you love most about farming?
A real good mix of activities, you know, a lot of hands-on, a lot of outside work, but also the management side, which is absolutely critical. So farming is an extremely sophisticated business. Extremely sophisticated, and farmers now they probably spend a lot of time in the winter and sometime in the summer on computers, searching out markets, looking at management issues, trying to reduce risk, trying to get the best price on inputs as well as on the crops they're selling or the livestock they're raising, learning new ideas for just increasing production, just that little bit that'll increase profit. So it is very sophisticated, and it's a great mix. And it still is, I think, a terrific way to make a living.
Were you one of the first kids in the family to go to university?
No, we were really lucky. My oldest brother became a licensed mechanic.
Right.
And my oldest sister, actually, his sister was the oldest, Joan, is the oldest, she became a nurse. So we had a registered nurse, the first person out, and it made it easier for others to go. So all of us took a kick at university. Some got more than 1 degree. Some started and went on to something else. And interestingly enough, and don't tell your kids this, but the ones who actually didn't complete university have by far been the most successful in terms of making money and having a really good businesses. You know? So it's funny how that works out. They just learned and figured out how to do that.
But I suppose the way you grew up would have had a big impact on that too, because you would have had to really just sometimes take some risks too with farming. Sometimes take a chance. Sometimes hope for the best, and that would have been a good foundation in life for
a lot of
business.
risk. Yeah. A lot of risk. And it's interesting because I've always thought I was someone who liked risk, but really reflecting on that in the last few years, it's not the case. It's just that the life I've chosen has involved a lot of risk.
Right. Yeah. How did you meet your wife?
At university, at a party at our house. We had a house. We always made fun of the frats, you know. Yes. So we call it New Cow Pie. And there are 7 Aggies living together in this house, and so we had some great parties.
An Aggie then is
agriculture. Somebody is studying agriculture at university. So we had great parties, and I met my wife at one of those. And
was she from a farming family?
What could I do?
She trapped
you. Oh
yeah,
that's the way it works.
How did she trap you?
Well, no.
She was just so beautiful that
that's right. That's right.
Couldn't look away.
That's right, exactly.
And were you together forever after that? Or
yes.
Wow.
Yeah. We've been married 38 years. So.
Isn't that impressive? That's really remarkable. Did she, so she knew full well what she was in for then, in terms of a farming life?
She claims she didn't really.
Well, you kind of pulled the rug out.
She was raised on a farm. She was raised on a farm. She knew.
And you pulled the rug out from under her by switching career gears part of the way through.
Yeah.
When you decided to run.
Yes.
Was it the type of thing that the whole family was involved in terms of a decision, or was it more something that you came to on your own?
Yeah, you know, probably it was originally driven by me. My work as a farm economist, one of the things I did is interpreted legislation that applied to farmers, so budgets where there were tax changes that applied to farmers. I would put on courses to talk about that, put on courses for lawyers and accountants with tax changes so they were up to speed and could work with farmers and that kind of thing, but also other kinds of legislation that affected farmers. I soon came to learn that whether you like politics or not, it has a very real impact on your lives,
right.
good or bad.
Right.
And I saw both, so that's when I started paying more attention. And when Preston Manning came to Lloydminster in 1988, January of '88, I went to the meeting, and about 40 of us there, and 10 of us started up the Constituency Association for the Reform Party in Vegreville constituency. So Don Vazenkowski was the Progressive Conservative.
That's right.
Deputy Prime Minister at the time.
How did you then decide, or how was it decided that you would become the candidate?
It certainly wasn't something I planned. You know, I had never planned on actually being the guy, you know, and I'd been on the board and helped organize the nomination process. And we had a process where we had 8 meetings around the constituency, then 1 voting meeting in Wainwright. And after the 3rd meeting, I'd been encouraged to run. But after the 3rd meeting, I was sitting there thinking, or during the 3rd meeting, you know, maybe I could do better than these guys. Maybe I should get involved. So I did, and won the nomination.
Yeah.
In 1992.
Yeah.
I campaigned for a full year.
What were people like at the door? Were you finding, because these are people that you've not just grown up with, but that your family's known and farmed with and worked with and gone to church with for forever and ever. And politics can be really divisive.
Yeah, people were, first of all, I think it depends on how you approach it. But, you know, at first a lot of people would think, well, yeah, this sounds like a bit of a, you know, a brand new political party, you know, we're used to this or that. And, but people were ready for it, you know, and it took a lot of work from 1988 to 1993 and we built a membership. I was very fortunate. The person who drew the short straw in '88 to run became my campaign manager, and he is just an incredible man. And he really drove the Constituency Association and got me elected.
So you would have had to delegate a lot of the responsibility that you had on the farm out, either to, was it to your kids, was it to? No,
they did help a little bit, but no, I just had to do that. I did when it was seeding time. I did it, and not as well as, certainly not as well as it should have been done. And then
crops
in the
were
fall,
a bit crooked?
Well, it just
rushed.
Yeah, they'd never had all the care they needed, but that was part of the price you pay.
Yeah, and you weren't upset about paying that price? I mean, as a farmer, did you think? Well,
it was a decision I made, and my wife and I made together once it came to the point, you know, to the time when, you know, I came home and said, well, you know, dear, I think I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring here. This is, you know, I think I can do better than the other 3 running, and she kind of looked at me. I don't think she was so sure, but she supported me. And then when I would partway through the campaign in '93, when it looked like we actually could win, you be an MP? You know, come on.
The vote of confidence.
Oh, confidence, total confidence. But she got over that.
So then what happened on election night when you actually did become the MP?
Well, by the time it actually came to election night, it was pretty sure, but you never, in politics, you're never sure.
Yeah.
So that first time out, I got 49-point-some% of the vote, and the next closest candidate was the Progressive Conservative candidate, who got close to 30%. So it's kind of the same mix we have there today. I get about 80-some%, or 80% of the vote last time.
You've been the MP there now for 20 years?
20 years.
20 years. It's a long time to be an MP.
It is.
Are you still enjoying it?
I am, you know, because there's still things that I want to get done.
Right.
And it's a big change from like 12 years in opposition, from being the third party to being official opposition, and then governing in a minority government,
Yes.
and then a majority. But in a majority, you can get so much more done.
Yeah.
And we are getting a lot of things done now, and I really like that. And there are other things that I want to see happen. And to me, it's very important that before I decide to get out of politics, we balance the budget again, and we have the country on track for long-term prosperity. And I chair the Natural Resources Committee now. I love that because it's all about building the natural resource industry so that Canadian businesses can sustain long-term prosperity,
Yeah.
which to me is very important.
You've seen such massive changes, too, in those 20 years in the Parliament of Canada itself, but also in the country, too. What are the most striking changes within the House of Commons, too? I mean, what's been a notable change for you?
To me, in terms of the way the political parties operate and MPs operate, there hasn't really been an awful lot of change. But what has changed is the conservative thinking has actually become acceptable.
Right.
And I know we had a progressive conservative government until 1993, but to my way of thinking, it wasn't as conservative as I would like.
Right.
And I do think that conservative thinking has become very acceptable by enough Canadians that a conservative government can be sustained. And to me, that's important.
What about in terms of changes in your riding? Has it become a different riding than when you first started representing it too? Less of a rural riding, more of a city, bigger towns, those types of changes as well that have forced you to adapt as well?
It's a good question because I was elected in Vegreville constituency in '93. In 1997, we had boundary changes.
Right.
Totally changed the constituency.
Did it really?
So I went north to Coal Lake, Lac La Biche, like you're talking.
Sure.
250 kilometers farther north, and a big change to towns that were quite different.
Yeah.
But I actually really enjoyed that, and from a constituency that had no Indian reserves, no Métis settlements, to a constituency that had 8 Indian reserves and 4
Wow.
Métis settlements. So a big change but I like that, and then in 2004 it changed back again. So I saw those changes.
Oh my goodness! Like back to the original, essentially the original boundary line that you had first represented.
Except there was an addition which included about 35,000 people on acreages near Sherwood Park in Edmonton.
Right.
So that did make it different. So your question is certainly a good question. And so I have a lot more people who aren't really rural people. They live on acreages, but they're really connected with cities.
Sure.
So, and that's been a fairly easy change, actually. I really enjoy that.
How did you handle the commute when you had the riding that went so far north? How do you handle the commute now in terms of...
That's the toughest part of the job.
Is it?
Yeah. Flying back and forth, 8.5 to 10.5 hours each way is what I did for years, twice a week. So, once west, once back east.
Yeah.
And it was 8.5 to 10.5 hours.
Sure.
And that added on to the end of a day, like an 8 o'clock flight to get in at 2, 3 in the morning. There were times when I had to get up at 2 in the morning to take the flight back to Ottawa because it's a 6:30 flight out of Edmonton. So, but that's what you had to do.
Yeah.
And that's the toughest part. The driving around in the constituency, some days I'll drive 1,200 kilometers and people might say, well, some days.
Oh my goodness.
Might say, well, that's not that organized, but it is. And we'll have 5 or 6 different meetings.
Yes.
I set up town hall meetings a lot.
Yeah.
I don't just attend events.
Right.
I still have 3 kind of sessions of town hall meetings where I'll have usually 8 to 10 town hall meetings over a week. And so we'll just go around. It's well organized, but it can be a long drive.
Yeah. Does your wife...
I don't mind that.
You don't mind the driving? Do you listen
Not too
to
much.
news?
Nah, talk radio.
Talk radio.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you call in?
No.
No?
No. I get calls sometimes.
Yeah, I bet you do. Does your wife come with you ever?
She has and does sometimes, but not all that often.
Yeah.
Her life, my life was, for the most part, a lot of it was in Ottawa and around the constituency. And her life was with our children and our community. She's very active in the community.
Yes.
And, involved in organizations. And that was her life. So, and that didn't change.
Yes.
So there was never any question of her moving to Ottawa. It's always a struggle. So we're kind of apart, probably 3/4 of the time, half the time in Ottawa, and then the rest of the time around the constituency.
Wow.
But at least there, I'm usually home at night, so it's
Sure.
at least I check in every now and again.
You have grandkids now too.
Yeah, 5 grandkids.
That's wonderful.
They are. They are.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's really fun.
And do you get to spend time with your grandkids?
A lot.
You do, right?
Yeah,
So
I
they're
even
in
take
the
them in
area.
parades and stuff now and
Oh,
again.
they would
yeah.
love that.
They
you
do.
sit in the back of a convertible or a
yeah,
tractor?
it's usually a wagon when they're
Okay.
going. I make sure it's a horse, pulled wagon, and then
they wave?
love it. Oh yes. Oh, they just think that's great.
That's fantastic.
So I'm looking forward to taking another. I hope one of our our 2.5-year-old granddaughter in a parade this year.
Oh, that's
she's of age, so
that's so
yeah,
terrific.
it's
Actually,
fun.
I have to admit, some of my fondest memories of being in the riding are of the summer parade circuit, and where you.
So you were involved in that too?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's.
You were raised in a political life. You know what it's like.
Yep.
Was it tough for you? Was that a
No,
tough thing?
it wasn't, and that's why I think it's great that you're able to involve your kids and grandkids, your grandkids now, especially in it, because they're really great memories, and people are very respectful towards children, I find.
I've got to tell you about our youngest son, and he's got a twin sister, but he was in about grade 11, and I was facing a nomination. In Alberta, the nomination is the battle. I've had 5 nomination challenges, and my youngest son at this nomination, they're all there, and my wife is there, and we're standing together at the door, and first thing I see him, he's grade 11, he's there shaking hands and saying, if you could support my dad, that'd be great. And he was doing it so well. And he was shy, like I was.
Was he?
He was, yeah. The others weren't, but he was. And I said, wow, where did that come from? But yeah.
It's
he's
very
great.
effective. I used to actually employ the same technique on door knocking.
Yeah.
I'd go up and I'd knock on a door and I'd say, would you vote for my dad? And it's really hard to turn down a little kid. Just like for your son, it's tough to look at someone's kid in the eye and say no.
Yeah.
So.
yeah. They never got involved in the door-to-door, but
No.
I attended, all 3 of our boys were in minor hockey, the girls were in Highland dancing and music.
Sure.
And so I would attend hockey anytime I could in the winter. A great place to meet people and to really hear people, because there's time you can really hear what their concerns are, and I really miss that, actually.
Yeah. What do you do when you're not being the MP?
I love golfing. Don't do it enough.
Right.
I love when I have time to go down south where it's warm and relax and golf. I love reading just novels, because as a member of Parliament, you're always reading technical information, and I tire of that.
I bet you do.
So,
what kind of novels?
and just seeing grandkids and family things, and to me that's it's great.
What kind of novels do you read?
A wide variety.
Okay.
Right now I'm reading. I think it's the 3rd book of the. Is it called King of Thrones or something like that? It's a series of 5 books, so that's what I'm reading right now.
So something that lets you escape to something different than political minutia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not a big political. I have political books. I read some of them, but I'm not big on that, quite frankly.
It's been a real pleasure to chat with you. I'm glad that we had the opportunity, and I thank you for taking the time to come in today. I know you have a busy schedule.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.